my own story, which I basically already told, was sort of brought me into this for interesting reasons that are different from the ones that have kind of kept me here. I grew up in like 8,000 feet elevation and ranching and skiing territory in Colorado, where my grandparents and then my parents ran a country store that, in addition to groceries and gas, also sold and made most of its revenue out of hunting licenses and fishing licenses. And my dad also sold guns out of a glass case and sold enough of them in enough volume he actually had to be a federally licensed gun dealer. So that's the environment that I grew up in, kind of working in the store and shooting guns a fair amount with my dad and my uncles on the weekends out in the hills. That's what you do in parts of the country that a lot of folks in Washington don't spend a lot of time in. So for me, having grown up a little bit in that culture, it was an interesting challenge to kind of be on the other side of it, but not really, because I understood that for the most part, folks who own guns are not opposed to the things we want to do. But folks who live in these parts of the country have a much greater tendency to be distrustful or mistrustful of government in general. They tend to live in parts of the country where the crime rate is lower. In those parts of the country, the rate of gun ownership is much higher. And folks in those parts of the country think they use, and often in fact do use, government services less. So in fact, there's just much more of a disconnect between the good things the government does and much more distrust of government, and it becomes an us versus them question that plays out in a lot of different ways. Healthcare, race, and guns is one of those things. So